came to the selection, which was in September that year, I made an effort, I recruited, I got people to come to the selection meeting, and so they came, and I was selected as a parliamentary candidate in 82, September 82. Bob Mellish had already resigned from the Labour Party. He resigned in August and became an independent. And it was, Peter will probably say more about this than me, but it was very much because he was clearly on the right of the Labour Party and was very unhappy about a reinvigorated left taking over the local Labour Party. It's more for Peter to elaborate that than me, but he left the Labour Party. There was some hint, I gather, although I wasn't part of it, to colleagues in the Commons by Bob Mellish that he might resign the seat, and if he did, would we have a candidate? I think in those days he was thinking, wasn't probably thinking of an independent Labour candidate, but was thinking that possibly the Tories or us might make a show of it. I never thought the Tories would make much of a show of it, and so it proved, as Fern, as you said, they lost their deposit, but in the end, Bob resigned in August. I was selected in September. The Tories had already selected Robert Hughes beforehand, and again, as you hinted, Labour was struggling. Michael Foot was refusing to endorse Peter as the properly selected local party candidate, national executive. Said no. Michael Foot in the House of Commons, I remember, said Peter wouldn't be selected. I think he used the phrase that's very dangerous in politics, over my dead body. It's the same phrase Bob Mellish had used about the closure of the docks, when he was very much the MP. So we then came into October, no Labour candidate in place, Tory candidate in place. I was due to be doing a law case starting on the 1st of November, lasting for 9 months, as the second barrister in a team of 4. It was committed, and I was busy preparing for that. On the last Friday of October, the law case settled. We'd been trying to get them to settle for months. They settled on the Friday. I went away for the weekend. I got a phone call over the weekend to say that Bob Mellish was going to resign on the Monday. I came back. I was coming back anyway. Bob Mellish did resign on the Monday morning. My clerk in my chambers, which were looking out over this constituency and over Westminster, it was something I hadn't really anticipated the symbolism of. So what are you going to do for the next 9 months, sir? I said, I don't know, but I'll let you know in the next day or so. By the end of the Monday, the Tory candidate had resigned because of pressure of work. And so for November and December and most of January, until Peter was selected, there was no Labour candidate, there was no Tory candidate, there was John O'Grady gearing up to be a candidate, and other people clearly getting interested. Cut a long story short, the by-election was eventually called in the end at the end of January. There'd been, I think, 17 by-elections in that parliament, including Peckham just a few months before. Again, I reflected if the Peckham party had responded to my phone call, I might have fought another by-election somewhere else, and who knows where that would have ended up. We had won by-elections in Croydon as Liberals, and the SDP had won in Crosby with Shirley Williams, and had won in Hillhead with Roy Jenkins. So this was the 4th opportunity for the Liberals or the SDP to win a parliamentary seat. Peter was then selected. I basically had been doing nothing other than campaigning for all of the time in November and December and January, because obviously there wasn't any work in the diary, and eventually the by-election was called. For most of the by-election, I assumed, and the press assumed, it would be the famous 2-horse race, but between Peter and O'Grady. Mellish was backing O'Grady. It wasn't until the last week, literally the last week, that in opinion polls we moved into second place. I think literally with 8 days to go, we overtook O'Grady in the opinion polls. That then suddenly made it the proverbial 2-horse race, and that gave a huge momentum, which meant that people came from far and wide, and we saw the posters go up, and it was clear that it was possible that we could win. I'm very happy, obviously, later for them to talk about all the details of the election if people want to. Peter in his book was fair enough, I think, and he can talk about that. I haven't had time yet to write my book about the by-election, but perhaps when I retire I can do that. But I think he gave 3 or 4 pages to having a go at me and my colleagues. Far larger parts of the book were having a go at his then Labour Party colleagues and the press. There were clearly huge unpleasantnesses, not least for Peter. It was a very tough by-election. It was fought in dreadful weather, and the result you know. I didn't know I was going to win. I had no idea till the day before that I was going to win. Only on the day did I feel it might be possible that I had won. And when I went to got ready to the count in Geoffrey Chaucer School, as it then was, I phoned my agent, who was at the count ahead of me, to ask whether we had managed to win. And his famous words to me were, "Simon, I think there may be a couple of votes to spare." That was the understatement of history in terms of local politics. Obviously, the election happened in February. I took my seat in March. We fixed a date for celebrating the election locally on a certain date in May. I can't remember what it was. On that date, the general election was called by Mrs. Thatcher, and we went back straight into a general election, and there have been 7 elections since. Final reflection for now, Fern, if that's appropriate. I'm very clear that it was in many ways a very unpleasant by-election. But I'm also clear that underneath all of that were some big currents in British politics, as you rightly hinted at. The Labour Party was fighting for its soul and trying to decide what sort of Labour Party it was. Mrs. Thatcher had come into power. There was a right-wing, aggressively Tory government. She would have been in trouble in '83 had it not been for the Falkland War. She only got back, really, because of the Falkland War. We had been strengthened by the breakaway from the Labour Party and from a few Tories and people from no party to form the SDP. We went up to 50% in the opinion polls as an alliance in those days. We were winning lots of local elections and obviously doing well in by-elections. There was a huge battle as to where the alternative to the Tories would be in British politics. Would the Labour Party survive? Would it break it to 2? What would happen to Labour? Would they be able to recover? Would we be able to take over? And for me, as a radical left-wing liberal, for me, in the tradition of my Welsh forebears, Lloyd George, and then people like Beveridge, I wanted a radical liberal party to be the alternative to the Tory party. That was my vision from the time of being a student. That was how I saw our destiny, and in some ways, that's how I would like it to be even now. I think that a liberal, non-statist alternative to the Tories would be better for Britain than a statist alternative. And Peter, in his political journey, obviously moved to a more non-statist party by moving to the Green Party too. So that's why I was here. I was fighting for basic conditions for the community. And I hope that the one thing that wouldn't have been different whether Peter or I had won is that on top of the agenda in this place for the MP for the last nearly 30 years has been looking after the people who need political support for the housing, the jobs, the training, the schools, the health service, that I think the sort of tradition means this constituency puts first. For me, that's what gives me the ambition to be the MP, and I'm privileged to have done it, and I'm very grateful that you've come to hear a bit of a story, some of which you may not have heard before.
Absolutely fascinating. I'm sure there's lots that people want to pick up on in the second half, but for now I'd like to hand straight over to Peter Tatchell.